Welcome everyone. This week, another Get Glued Up. So today we have not one person, two person with us. So one is Harriet Jenkins, who is assistant head of Thornhill Primary School, and our lovely Ibuella, who is our events and involvement coordinator. We'll interview her, and we will know about how primary teaching is working in this pandemic. So we have Tim and Harriet with us, and this is Stacy, your guys. Thank you.
Thanks for this. Marvellous. Producer will be back later to let you know what's happening next week. So hi, Harry. Thank you for coming along.
Oh, you're welcome.
So can you just introduce yourself a little bit more about than Producer obviously already has, but just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Hi, so my name's Harriet and I've been teaching for just over 10 years. I trained in Southampton and started working in Southampton and I've worked at a few schools there. And yeah, I've started this year as an assistant head in Thornhill, which is a really fantastic role. Getting to know lots and lots about the children and about sort of different sides of education. Yeah.
Thanks. And now that you're an assistant head now, but you didn't start obviously at that level. So can you talk us through? Because I know that you've taught in more than 1 year. So can you just talk us through your career progression from being an NQT onwards?
So I started off working for my NQT year. I worked in year 5. I spent a couple of years there in upper key stage 2, which was really good, very good for my subject knowledge and for kind of knowing how like the end result of primary, so aiming what expectations for year 6 and things like that. But I was personally a bit more passionate about working with younger years, and so I made a jump to year 3 for a couple of years, which was again, that was really good. I saw the transition from key stage 1 to key stage 2, because there's often like different ways that children work and different learning styles and things that would come in then. And then after that, after those 2 years, I moved into key stage 1 and did a few years in key stage 1, which was great because I developed my phonic knowledge. And I was in year 1 and year 2, I got very heavily involved in assessment with the end of year 2, like the SATs process and things like that, and moderating work, which goes on in year 2. And I've also done a few years in year R as well, which was a massive challenge for me, really. Just such a contrast to, I started off in year 5 with these 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and now I'm with 4 and 5-year-olds. And I'm assistant head at the moment, but I still teach 2 days a week, and I teach currently in year R.
Is it quite standard for teachers in primary schools to move around so many different years?
I don't know. I think I do know of one of my good colleague, teaching colleague friends. She's only really worked year 6 and reception. She's jumped between the 2 of them, but I think she's quite unusual. A lot of teachers have their comfort zones and would say like they would actually feel horrified at the thought like a year 6 teacher being put into year 1 or year R with all the little people, and then you get people like me who now I'm like, if I was asked to go into year 6, I mean, I would happily do it, but I have to recap how to do algebra and things like that.
I suppose there's quite a big difference between teaching year R and year 6 because the big age difference.
I mean, the principles of teaching, like throughout like, the assessment and teaching and things like that, it's standard, and all those like relationships you establish with children and things like that, like those are sort of things that you like, just principles of good teaching. So that would be whatever year you're in, but certain subject knowledge, like in reception, there's a different it's not on the national curriculum. There's a different way of working, so that is very different to how you might be in key stage 1 or key stage 2. So yeah.
Have you ever considered going into secondary school teaching?
I would, but the thing is, I don't think there's any one subject that I feel like really passionate about. I think I'm very passionate about reading, writing, and maths. But I don't have to be like an exceptional secondary school teacher. I would need to have that more in-depth subject knowledge, and that would be from. I did a French degree, and I don't feel like being a French teacher. So.
And that was a few years ago now. If you've been teaching for 10 years,
it was quite some time ago, and yeah, so my French would need a bit of a recap. Yeah.
Saw Phoebe's head then.
Yeah.
So, I did have a question lined up in my head, but your cat's completely thrown me off. Actually, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and the changes that have had to be made in teaching. So obviously, as a teacher, it's probably, well, as with many of us, you've not necessarily known from day to day exactly where you're going to be, how your work's going to look. So let's go back to, like, very briefly, back to March 2020, when the first lockdown happened. And if you could just talk to us about how teaching has adapted over the past year or so.
I think, it's been through it's been a massive learning curve for everybody, and the way it looked, like what teaching looked like in the initial lockdown in March, there's just been so many developments to how this sort of standard, but the education that children are getting for their home learning now. There's been a lot of investment in technology. The government have provided X amount of laptops, and schools have, like my school, a priority was getting tablets for children. Schools were given like catch-up funding as well, and a decision was to make sure that every child would have access in some way to for their learning if a lockdown happened again. And obviously it has happened again, and so part of my job as assistant head was making sure that we're monitoring like how much, like which children are going online, what they're doing, and what are the reasons why they're not going online, and is it because of technology, is it because of internet? Or then we have the roles like, can we help them with getting data, can make sure they've got a device so they can access our online learning. But back in March it was kind of like it was so different. School shut, and then we knew we were open for key workers. I was in that first week for the key worker children, and we had a tiny amount of children initially. Whereas now we've got a lot. We have got quite. I'm at a different school now, but there are a lot more children in now. Which is really good, because those are children of key workers, and those are vulnerable children. Being in school is a really good and really safe place for them. But yeah, it's just it's that balance as well of ensuring that everyone at home is getting the best quality education, and also everybody in school is getting that as well, whilst ensuring that we're following all our risk assessments, all our protocols, and staff are safe, and staff feel safe to be in school and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of balancing acts happening.
So so for example, you've got a day of teaching ahead of you, like as a teacher working from are teachers coming into schools to do teaching for those who are at home, or
I think a lot of schools, there's not a set way to do it. So I know of some schools where all staff are in, and some of the staff in are teaching the children who are in, and the other staff are providing the home learning. At my current school, we have a rota, so some staff are in with the children and some staff are at home. So it's we're kind of minimizing contact, really. So it's keeping things as safe as possible.
And are the lessons that are being taught online, are they live or are they pre-recorded?
There's a big mixture, to be honest. there are we've got a really good platform we use called Seesaw, so we can record a lesson there, put it up, schedule it to go on at a certain time. Children log in, they see what they have. They might have like a welcome message for the day from their teacher, and teacher will go through their timetable so they know what lessons they've got, so they can just dip in and out of it, and they respond. And then the teachers who are and the school staff who are at home will be going on to Seesaw throughout the day and responding back. So the children are getting that really important feedback, which motivates them, to carry on. And so they know that, there's a purpose for everything they're doing. In school would very much mirror what's at home, have the same timetable. It's just that perhaps if we're in school, we might be delivering things in a practical way with resources we have in the classroom, but the learning objectives and the lessons it's a very similar, that in school basically mirrors what's happening at home as much as possible.
So it's adapted really well by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it definitely. There's been a lot of thought and a lot of like time has gone into making sure that we had these things in place, and the teaching staff have worked so hard at my school. They've done just they are always coming up with really like exciting ways and ways to inspire the children and ways to keep the children motivated. So yeah, I'm really proud of everybody for that. It's been great to see.
Excellent, thanks. I just want to talk a bit more now about students. So at Southbank University, we have got a few education-based courses. We've got PGCEs, BAs, MAs, and even PhDs in education. So obviously, during the not obviously, because I don't know the answer. So during the pandemic, are you able to take students on their placements or not? I mean, did you know if that's been happening at your school or other schools you know of?
We had a student in the first term. Her placement finished by Christmas. I don't know of any currently, but I imagine that it would still be happening. I haven't heard that schools aren't taking students. I think with the social distancing, and schools have got very, very tight risk assessments in place. So if all of that was there, it's a different experience for the students than perhaps like the experience I had when I was a student, or the students who my own students had. It's a different experience because there might be different numbers of children, and they might be delivering lessons online and delivering live lessons and things like that. So yeah, it would be a different way of doing things. But it's something to think about because we don't know, time wise, we're not really sure.
No, that's very true. So coming off the pandemic topic, and just talking about normal life, when life is because we are going to get there, and students are going to be doing things in the same way, and teachers are going to be doing things in the same way, maybe with a little bit more integrated in the future, now that people know it can happen. But thinking of students on placements, well, thinking of yourself as a student when you were on placement, what's one thing you wish that you'd known from your point of view now that you'd known as a student?
I think when I was a student, the main thing with me was I lacked confidence, and that was a massive barrier to me being more successful on my placements, because I think I held a little bit back, and perhaps was afraid to ask questions and to even question things. And so I think that having that confidence and asking why, getting those questions in, I think that is a really important thing to take as a student, because students' opinions is really, really useful. And a student might come in and have be like, well, why are you doing it that way? And their teacher might not actually have an answer why that's happening. It might just be the way they've always done it, and getting a fresh opinion is always really useful as well. So yeah, I think going back all those years ago, I think I would have been a bit more confident, and yeah, it would have made me be even more successful as a student.
And as an assistant head teacher and someone who has had student teachers working with them, what advice would you give, other than ask more questions? What advice would you give to student teachers?
I think organisation, because when you're doing your placements, or if you're in your PGCE year, whichever, that there are a lot. There can be quite a bit of things that you have to do and tasks to do at certain times and dates you've got to remember, and you've got to meet all the teaching standards and things. And so organisation to ensure that you are meeting all of those things, you are hitting your targets, and to basically streamline everything so you're not overworking yourself. So working smartly, to be honest, and that's something that would being good and put you in good standing for the whole of your teaching career, to be honest. Find organisation is essential. So that's and as well, I think it's really, really important to be reflective, and that's where on teaching placements and beyond, because as teachers, like, we're constantly thinking about things, and thinking back and oh wow, maybe if I could have done that, or why didn't I try this, and things like that. It's a very reflective career, I find. So being able to reflect and act on feedback and just try new things, like, that's a definite important tip, I'd say.
Thanks. And also, I'm thinking of maybe inner city schools and schools that have children from underprivileged backgrounds, and schools that may have other things like that. What kind of, like, if there's a person going into teaching and they're concerned about the behaviour of children or how they would cope with that, like, what kind of, because you hear stories and stuff, but what kind of advice would you give people to sway them, like, to going into teaching, as it were?
I mean, I think generally people go into teaching because they are passionate about education, and obviously because they care about children and they want the best for children. And whether you're at like a leafy village school or an inner city school, or any a school that's known to be quite difficult, it's about the children. And you go into school and you're honest, you're transparent, and you make those constructive relationships with the children, and then they will want to please you. They will want to do things to make you happy. So you don't, like, behavior kind of falls into place. And often as well, schools, those sorts of schools are the types of schools which will have really they'll have behaviour policies and things like that in place. So you'll know that if X happens, I do Y, and everyone at the school will be speaking the same script for behaviour. So there will be lots of things in place. So you don't need to sort of worry about being left to deal with things on your own. Often as well, like, I mean, teaching is a very supportive. It's a very supportive environment. People do look after each other. They do support each other, obviously, like in most professions, but especially if there are challenging circumstances, it always brings people together. So yeah.
Thank you very much. I think that's everything that I can think of to ask you. We've been talking for 20 minutes, so it's actually gone by really quickly. Thank you, Harriet, ever so much for coming in today. That's been absolutely great. Just get Fadoos back, if she can hear us. I think she's popped away. Oh, there she is. Marvellous. Thanks, Harriet. I'll just bring Fadoos back.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, both of you. This session was really informative and we got to know so many things. And thank you, Jim, for doing your interview really well. I hope viewers really enjoyed it. And if anyone has missed it, they can see it on our YouTube and Facebook as well, definitely. And I would like to welcome everyone for our next Clued Up. It's a surprising thing with a surprising guest, but just give you a heads up. Next week, we are going to celebrate another LGBT week. And welcome to that Get Clued Up session.
You're frozen for this.
There
you go.
Sorry. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see and hear you again now.
Nice. Okay. So the next Get Clued Up will be on 22nd of February on Monday with none other than our VP activities, Zoel. And as I mentioned, the Get Clued Up is on a surprising thing, which is changing landscape for keyword communities. And the presenter is none other than Jim Weller.
Me again. Yay. So, thanks, Harriet. Thanks for this.
Thanks.